Hi, welcome to the Israel First television program from our studios in Jerusalem. Great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. There's a lot happening in the news at the moment and always in Israel. And I've got the Jerusalem Post, and if we can get that on the camera, it says, ISIS bombs 2 Egyptian churches, 44 dead. And the Islamic State claimed responsibility for the Coptic church attacks in Egypt. It says they were or a group belonging to the Islamic State claimed that 2 of the attacks on the churches in the cities of Tanta and Alexandria, at least 36 people, now 44 people, were killed and more than 100 injured in bomb attacks on 2 Coptic churches on Palm Sunday. In the latest assault on a religious minority increasingly targeted by Islamic militants. So this is something happening in Egypt. There's attacks on Christians, on what's called the persecuted minority and Christians throughout the Middle East. And in the studio today we have Rabbi Abe Reichman. Thank you so much for coming in today. Absolutely. Fantastic to have you in. And coming in at late notice because you've had to come in and you're filling in today. So we really appreciate that, giving us your time. And Rabbi Abe is going to be speaking also about Passover. But maybe we could just start off with that, with these attacks on the churches. And
yeah, deeply sad to hear that. And especially for us on Passover, Easter time, where you just can't help but have that association of we Jews were once in Egypt, and all of a sudden some things have turned around, like the Coptic Christians are being attacked in Egypt. Terrible.
Now your center, you work at the center, the CJCUC, the Center of
Jewish Christian Understanding and Cooperation.
And our viewers, you can go on to the website and see all the work they're doing. Now you have started a fund for helping the people who were affected by these terrible attacks.
That's right. And in fact, we're working with a pastor in Bethlehem who's involved with it as well. Stephen Khoury is his name. And the sensitivity to the other, to the needy other, who, if you just, change places, was just not so long ago.
In the fact that you came out of, the Jewish people came out of Egypt.
And of lots of other difficult situations, absolutely, but Egypt specifically, that's right.
And some people
declared freedom of man, which involves freedom of practicing religion, whichever religion.
And what's quite interesting is that what you might not know at home is that the Jewish people had to leave Egypt and a lot of the Middle East countries, with the state of Israel being reborn again because of persecution in Egypt of the Jewish community and indeed across the Arab world, and a lot of them, what we call the Jewish refugees, came back to live in the land of Israel. So a lot of them with nothing had just survived and come back here, and many from Egypt. And that happened, of course, with the state of Israel being born. And now, as we're coming into the studio, and bear that in mind as you're watching, this is news as we're in the studio today. We've got these attacks on Christians across, really, in Syria and in Egypt. We've got these different things happening, which is kind of interesting that they happened first to the Jewish people and now the Christian communities.
I would say sad, absolutely. And we'd like for the world to be sensitized to it, and it gives us an opportunity, I think, as a Christian-Jewish relations organization, to put money where our mouth is, and to be at the forefront of assisting, and we've done that. And you can put out a little blurb on the line later on about anybody who wants to contribute can do so, and the money goes directly, full money goes directly to the cause in Egypt to assist. In terms of food, but also to perhaps assist the churches to prevent such further violence. We'll see.
Now they can, the viewers watching today can go to the website, they can type in your website, and it comes up. They can
cjcuc.com.
how to donate.
Right, absolutely.
So do that today, because you can participate today, not just watch the program and see what's happening in Israel, the news and features from Israel, but you can actually get involved and help people today. You can go to the CJCUC website and donate to Christians who've been affected by this, and it's going to really make a difference for their lives. So do that today. Now, you've been doing, we have on a Wednesday, and if you're in Jerusalem, if they're in Israel, our friends
Wednesday,
around the world.
5:45, Bible Lands Museum, Jerusalem.
And
Right.
it's there every week, but do check on the CJCUC website and Facebook to make sure that is, because of holidays and stuff, that there's a session. And you've been doing recently at the Bible Lands Museum the Passover, the theme of Passover, and fascinating really, because I've never heard Rabbi Abe, I've never heard anyone talk about all the different Passovers in the Bible, and not just that, but the nuance, the going into the depth of where it came from.
Right. The reason we came up with that is because there's been a whole talk in the Christian-Jewish relations world about Christians celebrating Seder, Passover Seder. And there have been some of the veteran people on the Jewish side who were a little less than accepting. And, we at the center said, wait a second, let's take a look at the source. Let's look at the Bible. How does the Bible relate? How is it depicted? And can we learn something from it? And so we decided to put that on as sessions. We had 2 sessions on it, on that theme. And the theme being the Paschal Lamb / Passover in the Old Testament, in the Bible. And it's fascinating to realize, the developmental nature of that celebration, of that commemoration. And it stands out because in the classic Christian understanding, there's something about atonement in this whole ritual. And in the classic biblical sources, there's very little about atonement. Actually, in Egypt, it starts with a Paschal lamb that there's not even an altar, right? It's not brought onto the altar. It's meant to be a means of bringing the family together and the community together, so that they slaughter the lamb in consideration of how many people are going to be able to eat this lamb, right?
So it's more like a catering thing than how much do we need to?
So how many guys are coming?
Right.
Okay. He canceled again? No, this is the first time he's got. Okay. There's right. So there's a very strong message about family, but even more than that, it's about identity. It's about utilizing, in Jewish tradition, the lamb was seen as some sort of icon, if not a god, in Egyptian culture or religion. And it is God who says to the people, hey, I want you to take a lamb. And they're probably saying to themselves, did he say that? Did he really say that? I mean, that's...
Which would be a bit like taking a sacred cow in India.
Yeah.
It wasn't just... when we read the Bible, we think, taking a lamb, it's nothing. But actually, it's something against the society.
But I don't want to go there, because when we think about it today, I would say, I would never do that, right? And I can understand that, because we need to be, sensitive. On the one hand, sensitive to the other. On the other hand, there's a statement here. There's a statement of, eventually we need to understand that, and that is freedom. It is meant not to insult or injure anybody else's God, but it was meant as a attention grabber, I think, for the mega message, which is the freedom of man. You cannot enslave anybody in the name of God or in the name of man. It doesn't make a difference. And it's a stunning awareness when you read it. if we make the analogy to India today, I would have difficulty with it, honestly. But so I'd rather not. But you're right. I mean, in terms of understanding that's right. And then these guys take this lamb, right? And they don't really even know what they're going to do with this lamb. I mean, if you look at Exodus 12, okay, they don't even know what they're going to do with this lamb. He says, take the lamb. Exodus 12, verse 3. Speak to the congregation of Israel on the 10th of the month, and they shall take, each man shall take for his household a lamb. And then they go on to tell you if there's not enough people, and so on and so forth, so forth. And I can see all the people kind of saying, what are we going to do with this thing? I mean, what are we going to do with this?
Because there's a presumption now when we read the Bible that we presume they knew everything. Because we're looking with hindsight, we presume they knew about the crossing of the crossing of the sea.
And they should believe in everything he says, and we don't really, in doing so,
put ourselves in their position.
Absolutely, and experience the doubt, the je ne sais quoi about what is this all about. I no clue as to what tomorrow brings, and the anxiety, and we need to give them credit for that. In any case, they take this lamb, and then they're instructed to slaughter the lamb, but don't cut it up. Certainly not to chop it up and to put it into a pot. I want you to roast this whole thing. Roast the whole thing? Yeah. And you, wait a second. That means I got to do this outside. I can't do this in the house. I mean, I got to kill the house. Well, okay, do it outside. And then you see your Egyptian neighbors walking by, and you kind of imagine, whoa, what are these heaps doing anyway? I mean, what's going on here? And it's complete. And it's all, and then, and you know what, Martin? You can't you can't cut it up, even in eating, just the meat. And you can see the scene, right? They're all taking pieces of meat, and what's left is a carcass, right? What's left is a skeleton. And if we put ourselves back into that Egyptian scene, where the Jews are doing this, or the Hebrews are doing this on the 14th during the day, afternoon, evening, and then at night, all, can we say hell, breaks loose, and the firstborn are killed, and the Egyptians are running around. What's going on here? Oh, everybody's dying, and it's a stunning statement of, you want to join the odyssey of leaving this place? You want to declare freedom? You're going to have to do something very bold. And this is quite bold, okay? And initially, I mean, we talked about altar and atonement. There's nothing in here, in the initial Exodus story, of an altar. They do this at home. There's nothing about atonement. Yeah, but wait a second. You would say to me, but there's blood. Rabbi Abe, there's blood on the doors. And so when we typically ask a Christian audience, what does that mean? There's an immediate association with atonement. And that's wonderful. But in the original, right, in the Torah commandment, it's a lot more about identity. It's a lot more identifying yourself as somebody who lives, right? I mean, the classic, if I asked you, why do they put blood on the doors? So the classic answer is, so that the angel
will pass over.
Yeah, so I kind of ask my typical, wait a second. The guy knows how to come from Saturn to Earth. He's from somewhere, who knows where. He knows where planet Earth is. He knows where Egypt is. But he doesn't know where Martin lives or Abe lives. Oh, come on, give me a break. And so we feel that it's a lot more, the blood, about a statement of identity for ourselves. That is, we have to go through this whole process, but also for our neighbors. Oh, and you too are a Hebrew. Oh, wow, it's a declaration. It was a way of getting the people to coalesce, if you will, around the theme of, we're in this together, and we're leaving tonight. Are you sure? Well, that's what he said. We got to go through. Yeah, we got to go through that whole thing, and that's Exodus. the amazing part about this Passover Lamb and its development is that when we come to Joshua, it's a different, it's a much smaller story. But the critical part that I neglected to mention is that, do you know, there are two requirements for anybody who wants to join that commemoration or that ritual called the Passover Lamb. Do you recall what the two requirements are?
I think one was circumcision.
Yes.
Yeah.
One is circumcision, and the other one is to be pure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, to be pure is not, I don't think it's mentioned in Exodus, but subsequent to that.
That's ceremony. That's the ceremonial purity, I guess.
Yes.
Yes. Not in the sense of maybe ritual bathing or.
Exactly. Yes, in the sense of ritual bathing, so that people, are meant to be. It's meant to be a holy encounter, but not at the altar in a central place just yet. Circumcision, circumcision, because in fact the Torah allows for others to join, but it makes a requirement. This is not a ritual. The Torah says this is not just a ritual in 12:43-50. This is not just a ritual for for a classic holiday, but it's a very special ritual. So the Torah.
And one of the things that our viewers might not understand about Passover is that it's such a huge thing for the Jewish people. It is. I mean, all the holidays are big, but this Passover is. Why is this night different to all other nights?
Exactly, because it's the first one,
and
it's also the first statement of Jewish identity. And after that, we have Pentecost, which is about receiving the Torah. It's about the laws. And then we have Tabernacles, Sukkot, and that's a lot more about being aware of your surroundings, the other world, and the.
Right, and Passover is a joyous every year when we have Passover. There's a great feeling in Israel of joy. I know that there's restrictions as well, because one of the interesting things living here is that in the stores you won't find any more bread and cereals and when we first came here, Abe, we saw that whole parts of the supermarket were taped off, and I thought what are we meant to eat for a week?
And who says you can't put your hand behind that? Did you ever put your hand behind that white piece of paper and put it on the till and see if he charges you for it? No, this is for free for this week. Anyway, so that's interesting. That I'm sure for first time you look at that, if you hadn't gotten any.
If you've never seen that before.
Introduction to it, you're kind of looking at that and saying. In any case, joy. I just want to point out that so we did, to go back to the structure of what we had. So in our presentations, we've gone through the various biblical sources. We find Passover with Joshua. We find Passover, the next time we find Passover is with Hezekiah. Hezekiah is like 8th century BCE. And Hezekiah utilizes, you'll find it in Chronicles, chapter 30 and on, through chapter 31, verse 1. So you realize, if you look at the Chronicles 2, chapter 30, you'll see that Hezekiah sends out letters to bring people to Jerusalem for Passover. But if you look at verse 2, there's something very fascinating or something unusual that seemingly is wrong. And in verse 2, the king had taken counsel with his princes. Firstly, he also takes counsel, if you look carefully, with the congregation of Israel, of Jerusalem. Democracy? I mean, okay, but we'll leave that for a moment. To do the Passover on the second month. The second month? I mean, this thing says the first month. And Hezekiah reaches a point where he realizes that if he's not going to do it on the second month, ain't gonna be done. And then he sends out letters, and there's a whole bringing people together, and Passover is utilized as a coalescing holiday again. Not so much altar, because the Passover Lamb, in any of its historical realities in the or depictions in the Bible. No bringing on the altar, right? It's brought in Jerusalem, but then eaten at home.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. This is my question really about Hezekiah and this the bringing of the lamb. The bringing of Passover to Jerusalem being a central place. Was it meant to? My sort of confusion about this was it meant to be in the temple, or was it still meant to be in the home?
So I would dare say, firstly we need to note that the first note of it being a central location, right? Because in Exodus, in real time,
right,
it was at the home.
Okay.
And then Deuteronomy,
which was when they actually, the first time it happened, when they left Egypt.
Yes, but the introduction of a central place is introduced in Deuteronomy.
Right.
Deuteronomy 16, you'll look it up on your own, 1 to 8. And that's for future, and that's what they do. They then have it in Jerusalem, but they do not have it, that is, it's not brought as a sacrifice or offering onto the altar. It's a very unusual ritual where it's slaughtered in Jerusalem, actually in the temple. The blood is poured onto the base of the altar, but then the guy takes back the dad, well, the male figure who's there, takes back the meat, and then they roast it at home and eat it at home. And none of it is even shared with the priests and Levites. So it's a very unusual
so it's still in
ritual
the home.
altar. Yes.
Wow.
It's a combination, right? We bring it all, so we're all centralized. And Hezekiah utilizes that to underline the centrality of Jerusalem, to underline the centrality of the temple. He pulls them all together, and he makes a decision after consulting to make this happen even in the second month. The bases are, obviously you find it in Scripture in the Numbers, but we don't get into that. But then you realize that Passover, Paschal Lamb, is an introduction and a reintroduction and a reconfirmation of Jewish identity, but also Jewish identity in our land with a central political leadership and a central location. And we find that with his great-grandson Josiah, like about 80 years later, he does something very similar. You can look that up in Chronicles 2, chapter 34. And the last example is Ezra, but you can look at that on your own.
And I think one of the things the viewers might not grasp is that we take Jerusalem as read, really, rather than imagining the struggles. Hezekiah had to bring all the people together. And what is very interesting, as we come to the close of the program, we're again running fast out of time. One of the interesting things, Rabbi Abe, is I've just read, we've just had, as we've come in the studio today, we've just had Passover's just occurred, and we've had that in Israel. We've also got the just coming up, again, as we're in the studio, is the 50 years of Jerusalem being in the hands of the Jews.
Post-67.
Right.
And 100 years post-Balfour.
And the news
Or
is...
the British Mandate.
The news today is that President Trump will come for the 50 years and the embassy will move. So suddenly, it's expected. So it may be when you watch the program, it's been cancelled or something. But it's expected that Trump will come for the 50 years. Unbelievable. Things are happening.
And they will. And I would again say to all of us, let's have patience as well. It doesn't have to happen instantaneously. As long as there's a process and we're in this relationship together, we've got a long way to go.
Thank you so much. I mean, there's so much to discuss, and we appreciate that you've been able to
that'll be
share
another
these.
cup of coffee, okay?
That's right. So thank you so much for joining us today and being part of the program with us. And Rabbi Abe, thank you again for coming.
Pleasure.
And we look forward
Thanks
to
for hosting.
Thank you, and thank you. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Shalom, dear friends. Today we are looking at the month, which is in Hebrew Chodesh. It's very interesting because the very first commandments were given by God to the Hebrew people we're just going out of Egypt is in Exodus 12, 1-2. Let us read. Is written, this month, which is Nisan, shall be unto you the beginning of the months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. By setting a calendar, God declared, time is in your hands. You are master now of your time, and we can share it together. Now, we looked last week at Shana, which is the year. And the year goes with the sun and is like 12 months through the year. And the year changed in September, October on the Jewish calendar. And the root name of Shana for year is like to go over, to repeat. So it's like repetition every year. Here we go, another year, another year. But when you look at the name Chodesh, so month, is totally different. The root word is Chadash, which means new, which means change, which means different. So now I want to read to you the blessing of the months, because you see the beautiful words and showing this renewal. Let it be your will, O Lord, our God and God of our fathers, to renew this month for us for goodness and for blessing. Give us long life, a life of peace, a life of goodness, a life of blessing, a life of livelihood, a life of bodily health, a life characterized by fear of heaven and fear of sin, a life without shame or humiliation, a life of wealth and honor, a life in which we have love for the Torah, for the scriptures, and fear of heaven, a life in which the Lord fulfills the requests of our hearts for goodness. Amen and Selah. So we leave you this week with this beautiful blessing for the month, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today in our studios in Jerusalem for the Israel First television program. Don't forget, you can email us at info@israelfirst.org. And remember, we're the program that looks at the land, the people, and the language.